In the headlines, a supporter of the APNU+AFC Coalition has moved to the High Court seeking to block the declaration of the election's results from the national vote recount. APNU Commissioners walk out of a scheduled meeting of GECOM as the Chief Elections Officer fails to submit elections report again. Fires ravage GECOM Wismar office, the old Army base on the Essequibo Coast, and the CID office located in the Anna Regina Police Station. Doctors at the Georgetown Public Hospital are lobbying for laws to conduct organ transplant from brain-dead patients. And in sport, head coach Phil Simmons wants West Indies batsmen to get big hundreds as they seek to defend the Wisden Trophy. With the news, I'm Avinash Ramzan. Thanks for joining us. We started by telling you that the Chief Justice acting Roxanne George will on Wednesday at 10 a.m. hold a first hearing in the case filed in the High Court seeking to block a declaration of the results of the national vote recount. The political parties which contested the elections are all expected to turn up in court to get the Chief Justice to throw out the case because it flies in the face of the very clear directions already set out by the Caribbean Court of Justice, the CCJ. The case was filed in the High Court just before the 2 p.m. deadline by which the Chief Elections Officer, Keith Lowenfield, was slated to comply with the directive he has been given to produce a report based on the results of the national vote recount. The CCJ had last Wednesday ruled very clearly that the results from the national vote recount cannot be set aside and must be used to declare the winner of the March 2 elections. Quote, unless and until an elections court decides otherwise, the votes already counted by the recount process as valid votes are incapable of being declared invalid by any person or authority, Justice Adrian Saunders, the president of the court, said in a ruling. The court then said what should happen when it stated, quote, it is for GECOM to ensure the CEO submits a report in accordance with its direction of June 16 in order to proceed along the path directed by the laws of Guyana, end quote. That June 16 direction, which has now been given twice, is for the Chief Elections Officer to prepare a report based on the results of the recount. Justice Claudette Singh, the chair of the Guyana Elections Commission GECOM, had Monday set aside all declarations made before the national vote recount started. It means the only valid figures on record are those from the recount. However, someone named Masinga Jones, in an application filed by Attorney Mayor Robertson, has moved to the court seeking a declaration that the chair and the commission have not complied with the constitutionally stated process as outlined in Article 177(2)(b) of the Constitution. That part of the Constitution says the party with more votes wins the elections and that the chair of GECOM will declare the results based on the advice of the Chief Elections Officer. In 2 reports he submitted so far, Lowenfield acted unlawfully, the CCJ found, by dumping 115,000 votes. Jones is contending that GECOM has no authority to declare any person as president except in accordance with the advice of the Chief Elections Officer tendered in his report pursuant to Section 96(1) of the Representation Act. Now, commissioners representing the coalition APNU+AFC on Tuesday walked out of a meeting of the Guyana Elections Commission GECOM that was called after the deadline expired for the Chief Elections Officer to present a report of the results of the national vote recount for there to be a declaration and swearing in of the PBP's Dr. Irfan Ali as president. The commissioners, Vincent Alexander, Charles Corbin, and Desmond Trotman, spoke with the media, but they did not say that they had walked out of the meeting. But the newsroom was able to confirm that they did walk out and the meeting was not suspended. What the APNU+AFC commissioners told the media is that it has been the practice of the chair not to proceed with the business of the commission once matters are filed in the court. But the PBP-nominated GECOM commissioner, says Gunraj, said this is not true.
We were advised, informed, in my instance when I arrived here, that the matter has been filed in the court. And we brought it to the attention of the chairperson that she has established a pattern, a practice. When matters are filed, she does not proceed with the business of the meeting at that particular time. And so against that background, we have not proceeded into any of the substantive issues that will be before the meeting today. I would say the meeting was not properly convened insofar as the issue of whether we'll meet or not has not occupied our time.
The other thing is, was it as a result of the court action that the CEO didn't submit his
I don't know.
An explanation was not offered to the chair?
We cannot,
like I said,
to any matter that was substantive.
In that meeting, primarily in the determination of whether we meet or not.
Was the CEO present
no other
today?
matter that we engaged in.
Huh? The CEO is there. The CEO is there.
After the meeting was convened, an attempt was made to discuss the matters at hand, including but not limited to an inquiry to the Chief Elections Officer as to whether he had prepared the report. This inquiry, which was made by members of my side on the commission, was met by at least one member of the commission of the other side, saying to the CEO, he doesn't have to answer to us. Well, if he doesn't have to answer to the commission, I don't know who he has to answer to. This was speedily followed by a walkout from the commission by the other three members. And when that question was again put to the CEO, he refused to answer. He followed by walking out of the meeting as well. So here we are. The meeting was discontinued. I understand that the matter is fixed for tomorrow, and we'll take it from there. Like I said, as far as I'm aware, I have read the proceedings and I've made due inquiry. There is no impediment that prevents the commission from proceeding with its work.
Did you get the impression that the chairman was still willing to accept a report from the CEO?
Well, the chairman has made a request of the CEO since yesterday, and I don't see any change in that position as to why she wouldn't be expecting that report. There is no order of court that prevents him from presenting that report, and there is no order of court that prevents us from accepting that report.
The Chief Elections Officer, Keith Lowenfield, failed to submit his elections report as directed by Justice Claudette Singh. Lowenfield was given a last chance to submit a report by 2 p.m. Tuesday, but did not do so, Yolanda Ward, GECOM's Public Relations Officer, confirmed to the newsroom. It is unclear at this time what Lowenfield's reasons could have been. It is also unclear if he would be dismissed. Another meeting of the Commission is scheduled for 2 p.m. on Wednesday. The GECOM chairman had decided that if Lowenfield failed to present his report in accordance with her directions, she would hand the responsibility to Roxanne Myers, the Deputy Chief Elections Officer. There have been calls by political parties and the Organization of American States, the OAS, for Lowenfield to be removed and have no further involvement in this or any future elections. General Secretary of the People's Progressive Party, Bharat Jagdeo, said the most recent court case filed to block the declaration of the elections results is an abuse of the court. Jagdeo blasted the incumbent APNU+AFC during a briefing on his Facebook page. He said this new case can end up all the way back to the Caribbean Court of Justice.
Lowenfield himself oversaw the recount. He saw that all the parties signed the statements of recount. His staff tabulated those statements of recount. His staff certified them. He prepared a report of the 10 districts in a matrix, and his report showed that the People's Progressive Party won the elections and that you had 460,000 valid voters. That's total number of voters. Incredibly, the same Lowenfield has now produced a report to GECOM to say that 475,000 people voted in the elections, and the valid votes you had. 15,000 votes more than are actually in the box. And that APNU won these elections, and they expect the court in Guyana to say, yes, you can use that report, although it has fraudulent numbers, and it has within the boxes 15,000 votes that are non-existent. You recall they were claiming about bloated lists and dead people voting and how you had to invalidate 250,000 votes. Well, they didn't want to do that in this case. They just are accepting. They've changed to 180 degrees. And now they're saying that the report that they have gone to court for to say that Lowenfield report must stand has within it 15,000 voters who never voted on election day, who never voted. And so this is what they expect the court to endorse: fraud, to endorse electoral fraud. And so this is the crux of the matter. Going to the court, asking the court to endorse Mingo's fraud, because that is what Lowenfield's latest report is based on. Asking the court to direct GECOM, which it has no power to do, that it must comply with a fraudulent report from the chief elections officer. If that were the case and he has those powers, he'll be the most powerful person in the world, and because the chief elections officer will be the most, can determine the fate of any election. Doesn't have to have, you don't have to have voters or anything else. They can just produce any report out of the blue. But as I said before, the report had to follow a process. The process had to be grounded either in the count or the recount. And in this case, the recount overtook the count.
Still on elections matters, Lord Tariq Ahmad of Wimbledon, the British Minister for the Commonwealth and United Nations, has endorsed calls for there to be a declaration of the results of the national vote recount in Guyana. As with fellow members of the Commonwealth, we urge Guyana to uphold its fundamental values of democracy, the rule of law and good governance, Tariq said on Twitter. On Monday, Justice retired Claudette Singh, the chair of GECOM, took a crucial decision to set aside the declarations made before the national vote recount started. It means that the only figures that can be used for a declaration of the results of the elections are those generated during the recount. The combined totals from the recount presented by Lowenfield in a report to the Commission on June 13 showed the PVP winning the elections with 233,336 votes. APNU+AFC secured 217,920. Together, the other parties secured 9,096 votes. It means that the coalition APNU+AFC lost the elections by 24,512 votes. When the news returns, fires ravage GECOM Wismar office, the old army base on the Essequibo Coast, and the CID office located in Anna Regina Police Station. Stay tuned. A fire in the wee hours of Tuesday destroyed the office of the Guyana Elections Commission at First Alley, Wismar, Linden, and police believe it was an act of arson. Police headquarters in a statement said that the incident occurred just before 2 a.m. The female security guard said she was in the security hut at the front of the building when she heard an explosion at the back of the building. Upon checking, she saw two males running up the road west into First Alley, and by that time, the upper flat of the building was already on fire. The upper flat was burnt with the roof completely gutted. The building was being rented by GECOM. The cause of the fire is being investigated. Now, the police and the Guyana Fire Service are investigating two incidents of arson in Region 2, which resulted in damage to the office of the Criminal Investigation Department located in the Anna Regina Police Station, along with the old GDF building in Mariah's Lodge, Essequibo. Bibi Katoon reports.
Police are hunting for a suspect who on Tuesday morning attempted to set fire to the office of the Criminal Investigation Department, which is located in the compound of the Anna Regina Police Station on the Essequibo Coast. The incident occurred at approximately 5 a.m. and several items in the office were destroyed. The CID office building is located on the northeastern corner of the Anna Regina Police Station. The building also housed the offices of the prosecutor and the special constabulary, the regional court prosecutor and the regional detective inspector. Police said that a constable was making checks around the compound when he observed smoke emanating from the regional detective inspector's office. The Guyana Fire Service was called to the scene and managed to extinguish the fire. The newsroom understands that investigators found that a louver from the window on the northern side of the building was removed and placed on the street below the window. The window is located 1 foot above the chain link fence which surrounds the building. Items in the RDI office, including a desk, a chair, and several files, were completely burnt. The police said there are no electrical items nor points on that side of the building. Meanwhile, shortly before this fire, at around 3:30 on Tuesday, another fire was set to an unoccupied building at Maria's Lodge, Essequibo Coast, which previously housed the Army-based 2nd Infantry Battalion. Residents observed the fire and smoke emanating from the top flat of the wooden building. Police said public-spirited persons formed a bucket brigade and managed to control the spread of the fire before the Guyana Fire Service arrived at the scene. It was observed that the floor along the walls on the northern and southern side of the building were semi-burnt. The building does not have electricity. Bibi Katoon reporting for the newsroom.
The six-phase plan of reopening Guyana's economy allows for 43 of 110 concessions at the Giffland Mall to reopen. The mall reopened at the weekend amid strict COVID-19 rules. However, hundreds of employees remain off the job. Isnal Patwa reports.
The Giffland Mall was closed for 3.5 months due to the COVID-19 health crisis, with the exception of its supermarket and pharmacy. But with the National COVID-19 Task Force scheduled reopening phase, over 40 concessions can now operate between 9 a.m. and 5 p.m. Proprietor of the mall, Roy Bipat, during an interview with the Newsroom, said in the last few months, millions were lost and over 230 employees from the Giffland Group remain laid off. Mr. Bipat assured that once the health crisis is over, those employees can return to work.
Now, we've followed all the task force guidelines in terms of opening and closing and so on. So we've been closed. According to the guidelines now, we're allowed to open to sell essential products like our electrical items and so on. We had, at the beginning of the pandemic, about 450 employees. At this point here, how many do we have on? We have about 220 to 250 on. That means we have about 230 or 200 off right now. As soon as the measures are released and we can open until 9, I'm sure that we can return that 200 people back to work.
Hand washing stations and social distancing signs and markings were installed at the mall, and absolutely no dining in the food court are among the COVID-19 rules at the mall.
But what we've done, we've spaced the furniture out in case they do break that rule, so they wouldn't be breaking any social laws, to say, right, of being too close to each other. So we've taken a lot of precautions. There's sinks at each entrance. There's temperature guns to ensure that anybody coming in, and if anybody comes to the mall without a mask, they're refused entry.
Shivani Bass, manager at Rooster's Grill in the mall, spoke about the response since the reopening.
We have been open back on Saturday, but not with our regular hours from just 9 to 5, and we haven't had to let go of any staff, but we are kind of rotating. Some people are only working 3 days a week or some 4, and it all depends on how this week goes also. It hasn't been that slow, but it's going to take a while before work can get back out that we're open. Also, I think because there's no dining, we're just open for pickup, takeout basically.
The mall will be conducting an assessment to determine how many persons are allowed in the mall during this time. Meanwhile, beauty salons, barber shops, neighborhood grocery shops, hardware, plumbing, and electrical stores are among the services allowed to operate in the second of the six-phase reopening plan. Reporting for the Newsroom, I am Isnel Patwa.
Still ahead on the Newsroom, doctors at the Georgetown Hospital are lobbying for laws to conduct organ transplant from brain-dead patients. Stay tuned. Local kidney transplant surgeon Dr. Kishore Prasad and other doctors have been lobbying for nearly a decade for legislation to be able to perform cadaveric transplants. This is where organs are donated from brain-dead patients to save lives. Legislation could especially help renal failure patients currently awaiting a kidney transplant.
With over 100 end-stage renal failure patients in Guyana currently awaiting a kidney transplant with no donors, the Georgetown Public Hospital continues to fight for the necessary legislation to save lives and help resolve the burden of kidney failure in Guyana. This can be done through cadaveric transplants, where organs are harvested from brain-dead patients and donated to others. The Georgetown Public Hospital has the capability and equipment for this operation, but there is no legislation to govern it. Draft legislation was sent to the Ministry of Health 8 years ago, and so far there has been no response. The mortality rate for end-stage renal failure or kidney failure in Guyana is significantly high. This is according to transplant surgeon Dr. Kishore Prasad.
Over the past 8 years, we have been working with the Ministry of Health to try to get the transplant legislation be on board and to get it moved towards being legalized. And what the legislation does, it covers the hospital, it covers the doctor doing the transplant, it covers the institution itself of the transplant center and everyone involved in the performing the transplant. They even cover the relative that will actually participate in making decision to donate these organs.
While there was no study done, Dr. Prasad suggested that if 100 persons are diagnosed with kidney failure, 80% of them die within 2 years. The most popular treatment for kidney failure in Guyana is hemodialysis, but this has proven to be very expensive.
Dialysis is expensive. Patient cannot afford it. They go for 1 or 2 sessions, they skip, and then they go again when once they feel better, they don't turn up for the dialysis. So because of the cost attached to it, they do not comply. And that is what's causing our patient to die out.
The most common causes for kidney failure worldwide are diabetes and high blood pressure. Dr. Prasad gives a breakdown of cases in Guyana.
Diabetes and high blood pressure are the number one cause of chronic renal disease throughout the world. In the Caribbean is the same pattern we have been seeing. And there are other causes of kidney failure, like immunological cause or drug-induced and various other causes. But the most common cause remain diabetes and high blood pressure. These chronic diseases account for almost 90% of the cause of this kidney failure in our country. You tend to see kidney failure caused by the immunologic causes of kidney failure. You see that in the younger age group, around 20-25. But predominantly, when kidney failure is caused by diabetes and high blood pressure, you see them around in the 50s and 60s.
A total of 8 successful kidney transplant surgeries were done in 2019 at Georgetown Hospital. The patients are all healthy and living a normal life.
This year, we have only managed to do 2 kidney transplants, and that's because as soon as we finished the first 2, the COVID-19 pandemic hit Guyana, and because of the restriction and the operating schedule for the hospital, we are unable to proceed with any further transplant.
In 2018, the Georgetown Hospital performed its first paired kidney transplant surgery. For paired kidney donation, if donors and their recipient do not match, an exchange of kidneys is done with another donor-recipient pair in the same situation once the pairs are a match.
We have hundreds of patients who are desirous of having a transplant, and they just don't have anyone to give them a kidney. So we have at Georgetown Hospital, we have tried to embark on multiple avenues to help these patients, and we are the only country in the Caribbean who had started pair exchange, where you have more than one donor and you switch the donor around patient, so that patients who are not compatible, one relative could donate and the other relative donate to that patient.
Dr. Prasad explained that there are over 30 patients who have donors and are awaiting surgery, but there are over 100 who need a transplant but have no donors. Reporting for the Newsroom, I am Isanella Patwo.
We tell you now that Guyana on July 14 recorded 8 new COVID-19 cases from 49 additional tests, bringing the total number of known cases in the country to 308. Of this total, there are 156 recoveries and 135 persons are in institutional isolation, including 5 persons in the COVID-19 ICU. There are 20 persons in institutional quarantine and the number of deaths remain at 17. A total of 3,379 persons are tested so far, of which 3,071 are negative. Stay tuned to the Newsroom, your financial, weather and bridge report along with sport. Up next.